We are less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, so it's time to start going over some of the scenarios that may present themselves for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, Soren Petro with you for the Red, Gold, and Bold. Trading up, how far? Who would you go up for? How about trading back? How far back would you be willing to go? Some of the scenarios. What if Jeremiah Love falls to number 9? What if all the offensive tackles are there? How about Caleb Downs as a safety, which is a need spot if the best safety's on the board? Are you jumping for it? Rueben Bain at 9. Sonny Styles from Ohio State, starting to see his name a lot around the Kansas City Chiefs. And if it's a wideout, which one of the wideouts are you taking? We're talking about it right here, right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Off and running here on a Friday. Remember, if you catch us via the podcast, you can catch us live Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m., Fridays at 10 a.m. You can be a part of the stream. We got a number of people already in the chat room, already chatting it up. We've got a lot we want to get to today. We got a big list, so let's get moving. Trading up. Anybody you're willing to trade up for, Jeff? I'll give you the floor on this one. You got somebody that if you were sitting at 9, you're in Brett Veach's chair, that you'd be making the move to trade up for?
No, there's not one player in this group.
This could be a really quick. This could be a really quick part of the equation, I think.
Yeah, I just don't see it, because to me, if you're trading up, you're going to get a player that you're going to plug in immediately and have him be an impactful player for your team. The only spot on this roster where I can see that happening is edge rusher, and the guys who are there, specifically David Bailey and Rueben Bain, are guys who have, first of all, Bailey doesn't fit what you want to do defensively because he's a 3-4 hybrid type pass rusher. And we all know about Bain's arm length and all those things. So if you're trading up to get Bain and you're already a team that is not crazy about guys who are short-armed, I don't understand why that would make sense for you. And as far as the other positions, receiver, offensive tackle, corner, I just think that there's a need there, but you're not plugging and playing right away. So to me, edge rusher is the spot, and the guys who are there are not worth going up to get.
All right. How about you, Sam? Anybody you're going up for?
No, I mean, I wouldn't trade up for anybody, but I mean, in full disclosure, I put this on our list for a reason. One, because I think it's indicative of what the top 10 talent is in this class. 2, because I wanted to get this on the record, because I think it's possible the Chiefs think differently about it.
Of course.
Look, I mean, I think the premier talent in this class is at non-premium positions, and that's, Caleb Downs, it's Jeremiah Love, but you should not be trading up to get non-premium positions. You probably shouldn't even be drafting non-premium positions at this spot, especially in the Chiefs situation where all of their needs are at the premium positions. And I agree with Jeff. I mean, when you look at the guys who are, mocked to go in the top 10 in this draft, you've got questions about all of them, particularly how they'd fit here in Kansas City. And it's not just that Rueben Bain's arms are short, it's that Steve Spagnuolo doesn't even prioritize like average arm length. Like, he prioritizes really lengthy edge rushers, and he's the antithesis of that. And David Bailey, I think, has not had a great run up to the draft. I mean, there's the thoughts about what system he fits in, but now all of a sudden there's like on-field character stuff that I think has been publicized for a reason about him. I mean, I wonder if maybe some teams are trying to get that information out there ahead of time for why they passed on him. We'll see. It only takes one, but I just don't think he's the type of player that you can be so confident about that you trade up for either.
Yeah, I'm that completes the trifecta there because no chance, no shot. There's literally no one. Oh, and I wouldn't trade up if the team needed a quarterback. I wouldn't trade up for Mendoza either. I mean, I think that's the guy to take if you're at 1-1, but to give extra picks to go up and get him, I'm not as convinced that he is. I think he's more in the. And listen, there's always a complete bust potential for the quarterback. You just don't know how they're going to react to NFL size and speed crashing all around them while they're being asked to process the whole
with no offensive line in front of them.
Exactly. I mean, but I feel like the upside on him, we'll see if I'm wrong. If this guy ends up being, the best quarterback in the NFL, I will tell you I did not see it, but he looks more like the upside is Carson Palmer. The upside is a good but not great quarterback is what I would say. So I wouldn't even if it's a team in the market for a quarterback, I wouldn't even be moving up to get number one. So no, absolutely not. Am I looking to trade up from 29? Any names that start to be like, hey, if we get to that 20 range, let's use that 20 range as kind of the scenario because that's what we've seen the Chiefs do from this position before when they went up and got Trent McDuffie. Jeff, you throw anyone at 29 that would be on your list?
Well, I think Colton Hood is a name that's come up a lot, the cornerback from Tennessee. I do wonder, and we've talked a lot about the possibility of the kid from Missouri. I don't know why his name is
Zion Young.
Edge rusher Zion Young. Like if there's all of a sudden a big push for edge rusher and they start to feel desperate, maybe that's a situation where you have to do that. But I think, again, only for premier positions would you feel like we have a talent here we have to get. I don't think a wide receiver would make sense to trade up for at that spot. I don't know if an offensive tackle even, because you're talking about a right tackle. But certainly, I think if we get a run on edge rusher or if cornerbacks start going fast, I can see them saying we have to make a move.
Yeah. Okay. Sam, how about you? Where are you going when it comes to 29? You got anything you're coming up for?
Yeah, I mean, I think in that first question with number 9, I was like, I can't think of any scenarios where it would make sense. At 29, I think it's more like 95% no or maybe 90% no about trading up because this gets into the unpredictability of the draft. And I don't think the Chiefs, well, we know the Chiefs didn't expect that Trent McDuffie would be there at 21, for example, in 2022. And all of a sudden you make a move for a guy because he's so clearly higher on your board. There's always a player who can fall. I mean, there's this thought that there's going to be these 3 wide receivers are going to go in the top 15 probably. What if one of them falls to 21 and your first pick isn't a wide receiver? I mean, what if is one of the cornerbacks so you've got projected as a top 15 pick and he's there at like 22, 23 or something. So I think there's plausible scenarios, even if, I think we're all in agreement that we don't believe the best draft strategy or the best way to navigate the draft big picture is to trade picks to try and go up.
Okay. I'll give you a corner and I'll give you a D tackle. I'll give you a specific name at D tackle. I think Mansour Delane, if he's starting to slide, which I don't think is going to be the case, then I would be looking at getting up there. And I would say that whoever the next best corner is, I don't know that you want third, fourth, fifth. At that point, just take your chances. So I think it's unlikely that they move up for a corner, but I would be interested if the top corner started falling down because I don't think this is Sauce Gardner that's up there. But if the top one is available, then I'd be interested. And I would go up for defensive tackle Caleb Banks if and only if two things. If one, a 4th round pick would get me there. So we're talking about to about 25 if you look at the draft charts. And if he had a sparkling medical clearance, and I think if he has a sparkling medical clearance, he's long gone before we get to the spot that I would be willing to use. So I think it's very possible they will move up, but it would be a very select, and it would be really threading a needle to find the scenario where I would say, okay, yeah, we're going to go up. We're going to make this move, and this is what it's worth. I think it's important, and maybe in other years I would be a little bit more inclined to go do something like that. But this year, I think they need all their picks. I mean, like if it's like, oh, we could do that. What do you think? Not this year, right? Do you agree that the quantity of picks, the quantity of needs maybe makes it harder for them to find the scenario that's worth trading up?
I think that matters, but I think Sam made this point earlier. Like, I think Brett Veach is wired differently, and I think it's hard to change your stripes when you're sitting in that chair on that night and there's someone you really like. The point I was going to make is that we when you get into the 29s and the late 20s, you just don't know who they really love or like a lot. And I think Trent McDuffie is a really good example of that. They went up and got him, and then Kaiir Elam was the next player that was taken at that position. He didn't work out. And I think when you're in that job that Brett Veach is in, you remember that stuff, right? And so you're highly aware of, if this is a kid I really like, and we don't know. It's easy for us to say, oh, Rueben Bain is this, or Carnell Tate, or Sonny Styles is this, but we don't know how they're thinking about those guys who were later in the first round, how they're graded. And so there may be somebody they really do like, who they're like, this is worth it for us to go get. So as much as I think they should hold on to all the picks, I certainly think Veach is the kind of guy who falls in love with certain talents and would go after it if he saw a chance to get it.
There is an extra wrinkle with that part of the conversation at 29 and compared to past years, which is they will already have a player drafted, and they will already therefore have a position drafted that I think would cross off some of these very scenarios for them about trading up for a specific position, because it's already a guy. It's amazing how many times you go through the mock draft simulator tools, and I usually use PFF, but there are other ones out there that I've used as well. But it's amazing how many times, like, you might take Tate at number 9, and then you think the best guy on your board at 29 winds up being a receiver, or vice versa. I mean, you might be stuck. I think there's a certain situation where I don't think they should prioritize cornerback at number 9, but he might be the best player at number 9. And then cornerback is the best player staring at you from like 25 on to 29. And that would cross off some of those opportunities. And I say opportunities, but cross off some of those scenarios in which the Chiefs, I think, would trade up, is because they've already got a player in their class.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. All right, we'll talk about trading back. How far would you go? We'll do it after you hear from our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Concrete season is in full swing, and asphalt paving is revving up. So right now is the time to get your property on the schedule with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Whether you need new concrete work, a parking lot repaved, crack filling, seal coating, or full asphalt installation, their experienced crews handle it all right here in Kansas City. Don't wait until the rush hits. Call today for a free bid and secure your spot before the calendar fills up. Get the process started right now at GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait. Get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222. Or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, let's talk about trading back. First of all, Terry is always very active. He says, rather trade down at 29. Okay, how far down? Is there a limit to how far down you would go at 9 or 29, Jeff, if you're looking to trade back?
There's no limit. I think for me, there's not. I mean, I think you are going to have opportunities. I've said this before, that I think within their first 4 picks, you probably need to get a corner, edge rusher, D tackle, offensive tackle. A wide receiver might be in that mix as well, but I think you can probably find one later if you're not going to go for one of the big names. But I certainly feel like, the more you can trade back and acquire quality and quantity, the better it is for you. And so I don't think there's any move that would not make sense. I think they're going to have a lot of opportunities to trade back. But I was thinking, when we were talking before the break, I can't remember the last time I heard Brett Veach said, man, I can't believe this guy was there when we drafted. I just don't think there's teams like the Rams who are always looking to make those kind of moves. I think it's more of an organizational, philosophical thing. And so I think it would be wise to do it. I hope we see it happen, but there should be no limit on it. I think you're going to have great opportunities in day 2 and day 3 to get good players, and they should look at it from that perspective.
Sam, your view?
Well, I don't think that they're just going to be fielding a ton of calls at number 9. I mean, we're going to get to some scenarios today where I think that potentially could change, but they're not the likely scenarios. My answer on how far would I trade back is I'd trade all the way back to 2027 because I don't think that this would be a celebrated. I think, look, among the people that have been paying the Chiefs, people like our listeners, for example, who follow the team super closely, I think would celebrate something like that. I don't think it's something that you pop the champagne in the draft room when you're trading out of a first round for next year. But it is remarkable how many times that people will sacrifice the future just to get on the clock right at the moment. And in those scenarios, what always winds up happening is they overpay for it. I mean, obviously the most recent example and the most glaring example is the same one, which is the Falcons last year trading into the first round for pick 26. And the Rams got, what winds up being 13 this year. And they got a second round pick in exchange for a third round pick. I mean, they took the Falcons to the woodshed on the deal. But that's because guess what? The Falcons cleaned house at the end of the year. And you've got some other GMs this year that are going in thinking, this might be it for me. I better make it happen this year. And when you've got pick 9, you have a much bigger opportunity to take advantage of that desperation than you do when you're picking at the back end of the first round.
I think that's a great point. I mean, a lot of times those trade ups are fueled by someone who's like, this, it's a make or break year for me. And so it doesn't matter what I'm giving away here because I ain't going to be around for it if I don't get it right now. So I got to try to hit a home run. And this is my last best chance. The Falcons, the ultimate desperate move because they traded up for a guy with all kinds of character flags that now that may not even be a part of their team. And I loved your point. I'll trade all the way back to 2033, however far they'll go. I mean, I genuinely believe at some point the analytics. I think football is the furthest behind the analytic game of all the sports, and I think at some point people are going to realize if you just always. I think this could kill it too because there'll be no one to trade with if everybody follows this mantra. But always employ what the Milwaukee Brewers do. Always make the deal that's the best deal for the long haul. And if you're always doing that, you will eventually get into the part 2 years from now, 3 years from now, where you reap all the benefits. And if you're always spinning that stuff forward, you're always going to be in a better position. So, yes, there should be no limit to how far the Chiefs will trade down, how long they will wait. But I don't think that'll be the case because I think the Chiefs are one of those teams. And one of the reasons why they might trade up is because I think the clock is ticking with Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the clock will begin to tick with Patrick Mahomes. Let's see how he plays, if he's healthy, if he can still run around and scramble. But if they start to say, well, the shelf life on Pat's going to be like 35, not 45 like Tom Brady, then desperate times could come to this team, and they could become one of those candidates to be trading up. One of the scenarios, Sam, you put together was Jeremiah Love. I know we've talked a lot about this. If he's sitting at number 9, what's the plan for the Chiefs?
Well, let me explain how I came up with some of these scenarios, which is I went through the tool and I spun it like 100 times in the first round. And Jeremiah Love is the one that comes up the least, but it does happen on occasion. I think it's only about 4 to 5% of the times where he was there at number 9. But to me, the draft, like what the teams have to do is prepare for these, tight scenarios, these unlikely scenarios, the unexpected, basically. And what do you do if the unexpected hits? And picking number 9 does not erase the predictability. It just changes the location of when it happens. And I think Love's a really interesting one because he's probably one of the few blue chip talents in this draft, but he plays a position that you've already paid. And he also plays a position that doesn't cost you nearly as much in free agency. So because of that, I do think this is one of the few opportunities in which you would get some calls. And yeah. I would trade the pick.
Yeah, I do think that's where the phone does ring off the hook, Jeff. I mean, I think this is where people would be interested to come up, and this is where they can turn a profit.
Oh, without question. I think if he's sitting there at number 9, that might be one of the best scenarios they could hope for.
I agree.
in this draft, because there will be interest. I mean, you could even draft him and then trade him to somebody later if you wanted to do that within the draft, if you want to play that game. But I definitely think there's no reason for him to be selected as a player on this team because they've already made the decision with Kenneth Walker and DeMarcado, some of the other moves they've made. They're fine at running back now. But it would be amazing if he was there. I just can't see a scenario where he's going to be there.
Yeah. I again, we want to be clear. We're not calling this a likely scenario. Sam said 4 or 5% of the time. It's very unlikely, but these are the scenarios that the teams have to go through. What if this happens? What if all of the offensive tackles are there? Basically, I think Maui Goa is the prize that's there. If Maui Goa is sitting atop all the offensive tackles, and let's say all 3 edge rushers are gone. Let's say the top corner's gone. A top wideout's gone, top safety's gone. Sam, what are you doing at that point if you've got all the tackles on the board?
Yeah, so this happens about 20 to 25% of the time. Is that grinding the mocks, which is a collection of all the mock drafts, has Francis Mauigoa as the only top 10 offensive tackle projected in this draft, and he's there, like I said, 20 to 25% of the time. I do think this is another scenario where you might get some calls. I think, look, when the unexpected happens, you're more likely to I think, have opportunities to trade back than if it falls as teams anticipate it will. I'll just say this about left tackle. The Chiefs should not shy away from drafting for them long term just because they have other more immediate needs. You will never find a cheaper tackle in free agency than you will by picking in the draft. Josh Simmons left the team for a month last year at right tackle, which is where Mauigoa played at Miami. You've got just a guy on a 1-year deal, and I think you're trying to get by with that guy on a 1-year deal. And so I think you listen to calls in those situations, but I don't think you should be afraid to pull the trigger on tackle, even though edge rusher and wide receiver are staring at you in the face more evidently.
Yeah. How about you? You willing to pop for the offensive tackle, or are you using that to try to spin, more draft capital again? Has this become something that you can, like Jeremiah Love, get a lot for it?
Oh, I think if you take the offensive tackle there, I think you should keep all your picks. I think you should make sure you're holding on to everything, because you don't feel as burdened by this not working out. My only concern with taking an offensive tackle is that great likelihood that person's not going to play for you this coming season. Because Jalen Moore is good enough, and you'd have a $15 million right tackle sitting on the bench if he's not playing. It wouldn't make sense economically. But I do agree with what Sam is saying here. It's a smart play if you want to build a team for the future, if you're trying to build the best possible team for the future. And what I don't know is how Andy Reid is going to view it. You know what I mean? It goes back to what you're saying, Soren. It's like, are we trying to get the best possible team every year so Andy can get another championship before he's done? Or are we trying to make sure we're set up well when Jalen Moore leaves or Josh Simmons melts down again? I think if it's more about the latter, then you take the right tackle. If it's more about the former, then you don't take him.
There's one other thing just to note about Mauigoa in general. He doesn't turn 21 until June.
And they love that.
Yeah.
That's a Chiefs thing. I think he's the one guy. I don't think they'd trade out. I think they'd pull the trigger. I think they'd say, like, I think that's the one guy. I think he may be. I think Jeremiah Love, along with Love, Downs, that's probably it. I'm thinking that's up there. He's he's one of 3 players that have no flaws for their position, and I think are genuinely, no doubt, any draft they're going in the first round every year of the draft, right? I think those 3 players are that good. But it's and this is the only one of them, to your point, Sam, that is that premium position, right? Yeah. So that's what makes this okay. Let's go ahead and make that move. I think that's one of the reasons.
Well, and he's also the only position which you can't get him on the field, right? You take a corner or an edge rusher.
I don't know. I mean,
I disagree.
They took Jalen Moore off the field for the 31st pick a year ago.
Yeah.
So I guess they ended up trading back on that pick, right? I mean, Simmons wound up being 32nd. So. I certainly don't think they'd be scared to start him as a rookie.
Yeah, I think Jalen Moore is a solid player. I think they overpaid to make sure that they didn't have to injury protect. I think Josh Simmons was probably in the back of their head all along with that move, but I think he was insurance, very expensive insurance policy. But I think it was as much a statement to Patrick that we're going to protect you. Like, here it is. You don't have to worry about it. I don't think that there is a love affair with Jalen Moore I think if they brought in Mauigoa, Jalen Moore would be your swing tackle, and your first guy off the bench at either guard or tackle, and then they would say, "Nice job, he's played out his contract," and if he got in because somebody got hurt, then maybe he could contribute to the the pick you get for losing free agents. But yeah, I agree. I think Maui Goa would be a quick write it down, send it up move. I don't know if they're going to trade up for him. I don't think, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they continue to say, okay, we got to fix what's going on around Pat.
Yeah. Speaking of right tackle, just to throw in something extremely unpopular, because why not? I was surprised that 28-year-old Jawan Taylor only got $5 million because the market for swing tackle a year ago was Jalen Moore.
Yeah.
And he got a lot more than that. And so, like, I didn't think that was the worst deal in the world. And I understand, like, in order to publicly have this narrative that you're going to be a more disciplined team, that you're going to prioritize that, you bring in Eric Bieniemy for one of those reasons, it's hard to keep the guy who leads the league in penalties every freaking year. But Jawan Taylor had a pretty good year last year. Like, he was a good pass protector last year, and I thought some team would see that. And I just, you know, it's funny how often we talked about the fact that his penalties were a result of Chris Collinsworth talking about it so frequently that opening day against the Lions. That narrative might have cost him a lot of money because it prevented people from looking at the fact that he had a good year protecting the quarterback last year. The Chiefs, this is what I'm getting at. The Chiefs started him over Jalen Moore. Like, they had that decision to make. Jalen Moore's going to make $15 million and Jawan Taylor's going to make $5 million next year.
They had that decision to make, and there are times that I think they will play a slightly lesser player, or at least a player in my mind that's a lesser player, in an effort because he's in the last year of his deal, and it factors into their draft pick compensation for free agency. But Jawan Taylor was cut. He was cut. Yeah. Like, there was no shot. They weren't going to get any compensation for him. They knew they were going to cut him, and they still played him over Jalen Moore. So, yeah, I think that is I think that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I was surprised too that that's all he got when tackles are hard to find. And I forgot, where did he go?
Falcons, right?
Falcons, went to the Falcons.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Protecting the blind side now. He's a blind side pass protector now.
Yeah, we'll say, listen, I'm not saying that should be your answer for everything, but I'm surprised. I think that's a great point, Sam. All right, we'll talk about some more scenarios. Caleb Downs, Rueben Bain, Sonny Styles coming up here after you hear from our friends at Northland Injury Law. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait. Get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222. Or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is looking to grow their team. If you have heavy construction foreman experience with heavy equipment, asphalt or concrete labor, or just want to learn a new trade, contact Gann Asphalt and Concrete to join their team today. Top of the market pay, company provided insurance, and paid time off and holiday pay are just a few of the great reasons to join Gann's expanding team. Learn more about this great opportunity with Gann at GannAsphalt.com/careers. That's GannAsphalt.com/careers. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. All right, let's talk about the safety position. Either Steve Spagnuolo is going to get a new appreciation for Hicks, or Chamari Connor is going to go there. I mean, it definitely looks like losing Brian Cook, that there is a need. There was probably a need even with Brian Cook on the roster. So there's one safety that everybody agrees is top shelf, true #1 pick. What if Caleb Downs is there, Sam? What do the Chiefs do in that scenario?
Yeah, this happens in almost half the drafts on PFF simulators, that you're sitting there and like Caleb Downs is the obvious best talent on the board. And he is a terrific talent who I think will be ready from the first snap. I mean, he's a 2-time All-American. You can move him around a little bit. And no matter where he's lined up, it just seems like he's a step ahead of the offense. Like, he has a grasp of the defense so well that he might even be able to fit into Spag's system. And we don't hear about how long the playbook is and how difficult this thing is to learn. Like, I just think he could grasp it quickly. But this is the first time that the Chiefs are picking in the top 10 since 2017. And I just think you have to get a premium position here. Like, your opportunities are too far in between to take a safety here, even as good as I think the safety is. I think especially it's because you can replace this cheaply, and they have turned over this position, and it hasn't been the talk of how bad their defense is. For example, of, wow, they need a safety. Like, they've turned this over position over pretty effectively. And as hard as it would be to pass on a guy who I do think is a top 10 talent, the position makes me say that I think I'd pass on it.
Oh, I want to bring this up because Weston says, my worry is that they draft these high-level players and Andy and Spags won't play them. Like, that is a real thing, right? Like, they have to get beyond – they have to get on the same page, right, between the draft and the coaching staff. And so if Spagnuolo loves Caleb Downs and he'll play him, but he doesn't love any of the edges, don't force the edge on him, Jeff. Like, at least he's getting a player
is that a real thing? I mean, I guess like deep in the draft, I think that is, but they started Josh Simmons from snap one last year, despite drafting Jalen Moore. Omar Norman Lott was starting.
I don't think it's a thing. I don't think it's a thing as much as Andy Reid. I read the comment directly. I don't think it's as much a thing on the offense. They play Xavier Worthy. They play
Kingsley Suamataia started.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They found they were going to find a spot for him.
Yeah,
they found a good home for him. No, but I definitely think it's a thing on the defensive side.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, I think Juan Thornhill went through his period with Spagnuolo. Obviously, Nick Bolton didn't play right away, and when Anthony Hitchens was still here. It's different if you're playing for an edge rusher because you don't have to do a whole lot. But I think the positions where you actually have to communicate, he's a lot tougher on people. And Jaden Hicks obviously is going through that as well. And so
I agree with you on defense.
Yeah, and so I feel like with the safety, I like Downs a lot, but I tend to feel like safeties who play well in the NFL tend to play on defenses that are really stacked. When I think about a Kyle Hamilton or Derwin James, you've got really good edge rushers and you've got active linebackers, and the other safety is pretty good. I just think in this defense, a guy like Caleb Downs would not be as effective, and certainly his value wouldn't be so much about his physical skill; it'd be how much can he process, and we just don't know that. And to have a guy at 9 sitting on the bench because Spagnuolo isn't happy about the mistakes he's making would not be good business.
By the way, no safety.
Yeah,
that is pretty emphatic there, about that one. Terry did point out, yes, Jalen Royals did not get on the field. He did start the year hurt. We're not saying every single player, but I think it's clearly much more a thing on the defensive side of the ball than it is on the offensive side of the ball.
And like Sky Moore's not a great example because is Sky Moore any good? Refusing to play someone isn't just like not liking the youth. I mean, sometimes it's not liking the talent.
But I will tell you, nobody has taken in the first couple of picks that the coaching staff hasn't said, yeah, I like that guy. Like, at least in a healthy organization.
Oh, absolutely.
The coaches are part of they're not all of the equation. It's more, but I think they're a bigger part than people might realize. Yeah. And we know Andy Reid's getting whatever he wants, but Brett Veach and his staff do all the breakdowns, do everything, and then they come and set it and say, okay, we've eliminated this riffraff. Like, you want a corner? Here are our top 5 guys. Which guy do you like best? Tell me which one fits your system, and that becomes part of how they rank them up on the board. That's there. So, like, when that's the thing that, like, one day we'll hear the story of how FAU has been hurt constantly since he's been there. But he also didn't play that much as a rookie. So I would love to have heard what the conversation was with him. Who were the real first round picks? When did that draft fall apart? We've all heard the story about trying to trade up for the Ravens wide receiver and everything that year and kind of being stuck in that spot. But I'd love to have heard everything that went into who were the trade up possibilities. Were there any calls to try to trade down? But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. There's no doubt. The scenario that everybody wants to happen, Rueben Bain, Sam, they race the card up there. They trade back. Is there interest to trade back? What happens if Rueben Bain is sitting there at number 9?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably their most difficult scenario because the tape speaks pretty clearly that Rueben Bain is dominant, but you're betting on an outlier at the end of the day. I mean, you're betting on something that you're betting on measurables that don't translate to the NFL and saying that he's different than everybody else. I think the tape does say he's different. And I hate to be a fence sitter on this one, but this is something to where I'm most curious what they think of Rueben Bain. Obviously, they had him in the building this week. And so like they are doing their due diligence on Rueben Bain, but I don't know exactly what they're gonna think of him. My guess is that they pull the trigger here if Rueben Bain's their guy, and I think it's possible that because of the measurables that he does fall to 9. I was actually surprised by the mock draft simulator how rare it is that he's sitting there at 9, because I think that there's probably a better chance of him being there than even Caleb Downs.
If he decides to go to the draft room, Jeff, I am not going to be shocked if they're like, well, here we are, pick 28, and Rueben Bain still sitting there. Like, they are severely short arms. He also played opposite another really good edge. He played on a talented team, and that can be difficult. The Chiefs learned that. They trumpeted how Ryan Sims was why Julius Peppers was so good, because Ryan Sims took up everything on the inside and made it so easy for Julius Peppers to just work one-on-one. And that was bunk. That was crap. Julius Peppers was the only reason why anybody even saw Ryan Sims' fat ass on tape. So there are scenarios where guys can, the combination of the two makes one guy look better when it's really all the other guys.
I think the Texas Tech too, they had a terrifically talented defense. I think you wonder about every player's responsibility within it.
Yeah, Brett Veach said that. I've, had conversations with him on the air where he's like, yeah, it can be difficult when you look at an Alabama, prime Nick Saban years, like, okay, well, they got great line. To your point about Jeff about the defensive backs, there have been some Alabama stinkers in the D backfield. Well, it's because the 4 guys up front are consistently winning. Linebackers are running untouched the ball carriers. Safeties are just catching pop flies. Like it can be tough when everybody's great out there. So what I don't know. What do you think about Bain in that scenario?
I would take him. And I'm a big believer in tape, a big believer in productivity. Seems like everything you hear about him, he's a real leader. The energy's there. I get the measurables, but I think at some point, like, you're never going to have a perfect player. And at some point, you got to take a chance. This is the kind of draft where you're not going to get a perfect player. And if you're passing on a highly productive player because you say, well, his arms aren't long enough for what we want, that's not good enough for me. I think you take a chance. You see if it works out. You can make the best argument for Rueben Bain of anybody who's going to potentially be there. And so that to me is enough to say you take him.
How about Terry's comments? They can't miss on these early picks. No. And I think that is going to be their mindset. And so I wonder how that plays, because I do think Rueben Bain is a guy that if you're locked in and you can't trade back, I think Rueben Bain's going to play in the NFL. I think he's going to play multiple contracts in the NFL. I think he's a football junkie. I think he works hard, and I think he will do the job, all the things. He may not ever end up being an elite pass rusher, but he will do all the other things you ask a defensive end to do. So he is going to play football in the NFL. And if you're locked in and you are looking at this going, we have to fill spots, he will be a legit starting defensive end in the NFL. Will he ever be a guy that breaks the bank? I don't know. In fact, I would bet probably not. And I don't want to take him at 9, but I think that's a scenario where you could see them going at 9, is because I do think he's a high floor guy. Just because he's smart and into football. And so barring a injury, he's going to, be on the field, and they need that.
Yeah, but the guy had 32-inch arms. I think he'd be a consensus top 5 pick. And he still might wind up being a top 5 pick. And look, I mean, Jeff made a lot of good points about it. The one thing I always kind of laugh at is the fact that, hey, there's never been a guy with 30 and 7/8 inch arms who's done this. And I'm like, because those guys don't even exist. Like 6'2" guys with under 31-inch arms, like, don't exist. Like this is a rare.
They play linebacker.
It's a rare build for an edge, period. Yeah. So, like, one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of, like, there are definitely guys built that way who don't have success in the NFL, but, like, these guys just don't get drafted, like, because they're not it's not only because they're measurables. The measurables is absolutely part of it, but it's also because guys who are built this way don't have the success that Rueben Bain had in college. So the success isn't screaming at you to draft the guy either.
No, there's one comp. It's James Harrison with the Steelers, and who was about 6 foot and came in and really, short everywhere, but was a football junkie, was relentless in the weight room. I mean, that's the only comp. But finding the further, and by the way, he was not drafted, and he bounced between back and forth between the Ravens and Steelers a couple of times before he finally took off. So it's like he is not the scenario that says, okay, pick number 9, right? He's the scenario that says, let's give this guy a try. So
surprised there's no comments about your short everywhere comment.
That's right.
All right, how about Sonny Styles? Is he worth considering, Jeff? 6'5", off-ball linebacker, but runs really well. What do you do with a 6'5" off-ball linebacker?
I was talking to a guy in a bar last week about, I think he threw out Sonny Styles before I think somebody else in the mock draft put him out there. I was like, how many off-ball linebackers can you name in the NFL right now? That you really are like, this guy blows me away as a player. It's just the way people play football right now. That position, outside of a Fred Warner type guy, someone like most guys playing that position on NFL teams are not highly drafted, highly accomplished, highly acclaimed. And so that alone can tell you a lot about how I feel about Sonny Styles. I mean, he's a great talent, but another guy who played on a great defense with a whole bunch of great athletes. Is he going to be a difference maker for you in this league? I don't see it. I think the difference makers in this league are edge rushers, they're corners, middle linebackers in some cases on defense, defensive tackles. But that position, to say that's the guy you're going to take, I don't know how he fits next to with Nick Bolton and Tranquil and all those guys who are there. But on top of that, I just don't think you get much bang for your buck with it. So to me, it's a lot of smoke. And those guys, phenomenal combine numbers, but we know how that's been before with certain players. That's great that you're doing well there, but doesn't mean you're going to be a 10-year All-Pro.
I mean, he sounds to me like the kid from Kansas City that played at Clemson that went to the Cardinals high.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah.
I do think it's worth pointing out that the only 2 guys that Jeff has passed on in these scenarios both went to Ohio State.
That's all right. Yeah, I said I liked him though. I both.
I can't wait till we get to. I can't wait till we get to the Tate, the wideout. I know where that's going.
Exactly.
Right away.
Yeah,
not gonna be at the top of your list either. There. But how about you, Sam? What do you? The off ball. I think we're going to be talking about this kid in the teens.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said about Downs. Although Downs is much more productive as a player at Ohio State. Like I said, 2-time All-American, and I think Downs has some weird stat about not giving up a touchdown in like his 2 years at Ohio State. Now safeties aren't always guarding one-on-one, but Styles doesn't have the same like data and numbers behind him in college. The production, I don't know that the tape looks the same way it does with Caleb Downs or with Styles as it does with Caleb Downs, in which case you've got the same argument about non-premium position, but I just don't think his floor is as high. Like I think Caleb Downs has a really high floor. Like he's going to be a good player. Is he going to excel enough for you to take him at number 9? With Styles, I think you've got the question about what is his floor and what is his ceiling because of his position.
Yeah, I agree. I think Arvell Reese, we could put him up there as well, because what is Arvell Reese? Like I think somebody's going to try to make him an edge, but you're talking about a position change, and people are talking about him going number 2. I mean, like I think there's a scenario where Arvell Reese is sitting there, and I think you would have an easier time projecting him to being on the edge. And if the Chiefs did take him, I think that's what Steve Spagnuolo saw when he looked at the tape was, okay, we're going to put him, but he's not a lengthy armed guy either. He's not a short arm guy. He's more like, I think he's like 32. I want to say 32 and change maybe on the arm length, but he's, 4.45 or something like that in the 40-yard dash. And, but he does, I think he translates more to being a hand on the ground type of guy.
Remember, there was a guy, and I think it was the year Eric Fisher got drafted. He came from Oregon. Miami drafted him number 3. His name was Deion Jordan.
Yes.
He was an off-ball linebacker. They didn't know what to do with him in the NFL. He just went away.
They tried to make him a pass.
Yeah.
He was just like this. He was 6'5". He ran a great 40. All those different things, and the Lions couldn't figure out what the hell to do with him. And
I think that speaks also to your Isaiah Simmons point about the kid that went to I think it was Olathe North and went to the Cardinals. And I remember talking to him at the combine, and he had talked about his positional versatility. And like that was the talk of that year's combine. The Chiefs had just won the Super Bowl. Tyrann Mathieu was playing in the box that year rather than playing deep safety. And a lot of the defensive players were mentioning Mathieu specifically, but also talking about their positional versatility. And I remember thinking even at that combine, I love the guy who excels at one position because I don't want to move him around. Like I want to play the guy at one position and just have him just dominate that spot. To your point, I'm a little surprised that it just seems to be the consensus that Reese has gone at 2.
Yeah,
look who he's going to. The Jets, right? That explains it. So do stupid things all the time.
We'll know more about this draft after the Jets pick because we'll know that's the guy who sucks. I love that. That's great.
It's a bad year to have number 2. I'll say
it
that
is.
because I don't know who I would take at number 2.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think it's, if they didn't sign a running back and Love fell, but we don't think he's going to fall, then this would be a great draft for the Chiefs. Like, oh, it's perfect. But they've now signed a running back because I think they know Love's not going to fall. So I think there's only the people who take at a pick appropriate spot. Like I said, Love, Downs, and Maui Goa are going to be like, we nailed it. Yeah. Everybody else will be like, we got work to do.
Well, part of the problem is the draft is built for dreamers. And so it's very hard to be pragmatic when you're doing this stuff. That's why I said the Rueben Bain thing. Like, you just take the best option, the guy who's played the best. And I heard Colin Cowherd say this about the Jets years ago when they were trying to pick between Mekhi Becton and Tristan Wirfs. And they were like, Mekhi Becton, the size, and look how big he is and how he moves. And Tristan Wirfs, another boring Iowa lineman. What's he going to be? And look where they are now. Yeah. The boring guy's been all pro and second contract, and Becton's on his third team.
I like it. Team. Draft boring. The Jeff Chadiha GM mantra. I like it a lot. All right, wide receiver. Does anybody make sense at number 9 of the wide receivers, Jeff? Are you take any one of them? And if so, which one?
The guy I like the most is probably not the traditional guy they would take, but the kid from USC.
So not the Ohio State guy.
Yeah, not the Ohio State guy. Not him. Not Carnell Tate. I'm telling you right now, that 40 time legitimized it before he even ran it. Like, to me, I think Tate is talented, but I think he's a one-trick pony. I think he's a deep threat guy who's masquerading as an all-around threat, and so I don't like players like that. And he played opposite Jeremiah Smith, so he got a lot of favorable matchups. And he didn't dominate in the way most Ohio State guys usually dominate statistically. Jordan Tyson got an injury history, and he had 1 year in college when he wasn't hurt, and so that scares me. So Mekhi Lemon, to me, is the most reliable. He's dynamic. He's built like a running back. He's more of a slot receiver type guy, but I think they could use a player like that who could do a lot of different things with his quickness and his toughness. And so to me, he'd be the one guy I would feel good about at 9.
Okay. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, this gets back into what we've said about a lot of the guys in this draft, which is that there aren't really these sure things you would like. And the rare occasion you have to pick in the top 10 that somebody's just jumping off the page at you. Tate, I think, is the best wide receiver in this draft. And so I think if he's there, if you've got your pick of the wide receivers, I would take Tate. I think, first of all, he's also only 21. I think he turns 22 or just turned 21, I think. So he's a younger guy that you could see giving a second contract to. Jeff mentioned, and I agree with it, just the injury history with Tyson. Mekhi Lemon, I'm intrigued as like everyone else is, but man, I just think we'd be sitting there on draft night thinking this feels awfully similar to the type of guys that they've tried to make into Tyreek Hill again. And I just don't know. I guess I would have my doubts, and maybe that's unfair to pigeonhole him into some of these other speed guys that they've had because I know he can do more things, but they certainly love guys that don't have great size. And I don't know if they need another one.
I would be more inclined to jump at is it Omari? Omar Cooper
at 20
at 29.
At 29, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like any of these guys at 9. I think they're all flawed, and so I'd be fine with any of the 3 at 29. I don't, most scenarios don't have that happening, but if there are a number of scenarios, they're becoming fewer and fewer to find. Like early on, Omar Cooper at like 40 was something that you see a lot in these mock drafts. And now you're starting to see him into the 20s. And so I don't know that he's going to be there, but I like what I see out of him when I watch the little videos of his highlights. And I don't see what's different between him and these three guys that we're talking about.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, I think the one trick with Cooper is just he basically only played the slot last year. And that's where you want to play Rashee Rice and really where you want to play Travis Kelce too. Now, those guys are probably both on their last years. And so I mentioned earlier with the tackle, like I think you should be drafting for the future, not just like the most immediate fix you have. And that's a tough thing for a Super Bowl aspirational team that went 6-11 last year. I think it's going to be the easier thing to try and get a quick fix. But I do think that they like collect slot guys, and like you need an outside receiver as well. I get the one last question since we went through all these scenarios that I probably should have added to our list as we all three of us compiled this ahead of time. But I started thinking as we were going through this exercise, what would be best case scenario if one of these scenarios happened to the Chiefs? And I think it's the most rare one, which is Love falls and you're allowed to trade back, and maybe you get an extra pick in this year's draft, or maybe you're set up to be in a pretty good spot for next year's draft.
Yeah, I can't see a better scenario because I think Maui Goa sitting there at 9, if you want to trade back, could get you. I think Maui Goa sitting at 9 and drafting him is the best scenario, because I think it gives you it checks that premium position. You got a guy that I feel for 5 years is going to start, and you're likely to be wanting to sign him to a second contract. And it sets you up where you go into every draft here moving forward going, we don't even have to think about tackle, right? Like we are set. Assuming Simmons can stay healthy, but which is a big, and if Simmons can't stay healthy, you've got a guy who could potentially make the switch over to the left side. But that's the thing about him too, is he's played on the right. So there's no adjustment. He comes right in at right tackle. Simmons is at left tackle, and you have two good young tackles, assuming Simmons is going to be healthy and there's not going to be any more issues, which is a question. I don't think it's a giant question, but I think it's a question. I think that's the best scenario. And I think because defensive end has been written next to everybody's name, I just don't see the defensive end that's worth it. So I'd rather take a project like Zion Young later, or, throw a couple of numbers at it, or try to get a couple of defensive tackles, in that 29 and 40 range where you beef up the interior of the line. And hopefully that allows George Karlaftis to shine more. That gives you an opportunity, to maybe find a diamond in the rough later on. But I think if you solve tackles and then you're going to be picking 22 to 32, that's one premium position you don't have to worry about anymore. You do a good job of developing corner, tackles to be taken care of. Now you can throw some numbers at trying to find that elite edge somewhere along the way. So I think the best case scenario would be Maui Goa at 9 and them drafting him. Jeff, your best case?
Best case scenario, I mean, for the first two picks, you're talking
the
about?
Chiefs at least at 9.
For number 9, yeah.
At 9. It's Jeremiah Love being there. It's Jeremiah Love being there and having the option of trading. Because to me, it's so important that they recognize you are not a championship contender right now, and you've got to build yourself back into that. Like the last time we were in this space, when in 22, when they had all those guys, McDuffie and Karlaftis, they were still very much, talked about super, number one favorite to win it all, Mahomes at his best. You're in a place now where there's a lot of uncertainty around you, and you've got to build a team and a roster. And so, yeah, I think the more opportunities you got to get good players who can help you for 4 years, the better off you're going to be. Because the better chance you have of finding some stars too, right? Yeah. If you're picking because you think a guy's a star, that's one thing. But if you're picking a number of players and somebody becomes a star in that group, that's the better option.
Yeah. If you want a whole draft, it's offensive tackle, defensive tackle, edge, and then we're to the third round's at 74. It's running back at 109. I'll say that. Finding another running back at 109 is where I think there are good running backs that are there, that somebody out of that mix is going to be a quality running back. It's getting a running back in there at 109, and at 74, it's probably corner. That would be my scenario. I can't find the scenario because I think they need multiple people on the defensive line. I think they have to come away with at least two. And I would almost say
I think three.
I'm with three. I think two defensive tackles and a defensive end. And so I do feel like we're gonna come out of this. There's gonna be another Jalen Royals or there's gonna be a Jalen Watson. Like what? They're either corner or wide out. One of those spots in my mind is going to be a guy that you really wish you'd have gotten somebody earlier. You will have taken things you wanted and needed, but I do think we're going to be like, okay, they didn't get to wide out or they didn't get to corner, and I'm wondering if they think it's corner and that's why they signed Kyrie Elam. Is that's the one that they think as they look at it, the way it's going to fall and what they're going to need, they're going to be like, okay, all the corners have passed because they went for Noel Williams. They moved up for Noel Williams, right? Because he was the last guy that thought was a difference maker, and that came in the third round last year.
Yeah, I was going to say that they should look at the Rams as a great blueprint for what they should be thinking about doing because the Rams are loaded up on offense. They had the 31st most expensive defense in the league last year, and they came within a couple plays of going to the Super Bowl. And a lot of those guys weren't first. Only one of those guys was a first-round pick. Oh, now McDuffie's there, but I think it was Jared Verse, right? Was the only first-round pick. That group. Well, everybody else was.
And one of the reasons it didn't work for the Chiefs is because they did spend a lot more on the offense, and it sucked.
Yeah,
right? Like that was part of the reason why they were 6-11 last year. Was they had a lot of money tied up in that. It still didn't end up working out when it's all said and done. You got a worst case scenario, Sam? Since you floated the best.
Yeah, I think it's downs, and it's honestly the most frequent scenario that you're sitting there, and Tate's gone, Bain's gone. All the other guys that the unlikely scenarios of falling are gone, and it's just downs. And like you don't want to take a safety at 9, and I don't know that you're going to be fielding a ton of calls. And then it's kind of like, well, now what? And I think that's they're rocking a hard place.
Yeah,
best available.
Yeah. But I don't know who that best available would be. I mean, you're missing the tackle. You're missing. I mean. Bain, you're missing Tate, and look, I think someone in the comments said this. I think that's probably the scenario where you wind up taking corner, and I know Jeff did whenever we did our mock draft a week and a half ago.
But to flip that though, they could end up with a pick that doesn't make them happy today, but with the way this draft could look in 4 years, that player could be the best player in the top 10.
Yeah.
No, I think Arvell Reese, those guys are a way more riskier picks than whatever they're going to take at 9.
That's a pretty good point. I do think the worst case scenario is having the draft fall where like we said that Maui Go is gone, even Tate's gone, Love's gone. I think one of the worst case scenarios is sitting there and going, well, we got to go wide out. And because I'm not convinced. Like, does anybody have a conviction on any one of those three that this guy is the best wideout in this class? Does anybody have a conviction?
I think you could do worse than Carnell Tate. I mean, I think he's got a pretty high floor. I don't think he's just going to be a complete bust. I think he'll get on the field for you in week 1. But is he Jamar Chase? No. Right. I mean, yes. There's not that type of talent. No.
Maybe CeeDee Lamb.
No,
because that's the high. People have looked at CeeDee Lamb's 40 and I think it's like 0.4 faster than his was, and so they'll be like, well, CeeDee Lamb, that's the upside.
400s, I assume you mean, yeah.
Yeah, 400s. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I don't think that there's an All-Pro here, but could Tate become a Pro Bowler? I mean, I think that's possible.
Listen, you can always support the Red, Gold, and Bold by supporting our great sponsors, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. They are in full swing with the asphalt, the concrete. The schedule's filling up fast. If you need any work done, whether it's simple striping, maybe concrete bumper, signage, or it's building a whole new parking lot, they're Kansas City's best for more than 30 years. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com and our friends at Northland Injury Law. Kansas City's best, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted number 1 accident lawyer in Kansas City. Google 5-star rated. Text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT if you've got a case. For Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold.